Yeah. Perfect. Alvin is opening a bottle. That's a good sign. And you're sitting in front of Heiligenstein, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's an earthquake?
So I moved it too much to the west, so now it fits.
Okay.
There we go.
So you obviously took over quite a winery, and you obviously made quite a generational change with it.
Yes, that's
What
true.
motivated you to do that?
I mean, I was never this real typical winemaker son or boy. I always wanted to get as far as possible away from home, because when you grow up in the Kamptal region, you're basically just surrounded by vineyards. There's not much happening there. So I tried to escape and go to Vienna, and then jumped in the first plane to travel around the wine world. And this was for me years of collecting beautiful moments with wine people all around the world, with new world visions and lifestyle, and to get in touch with the French guys, and getting told all about tradition et terroir. And this was for me like a nice trip, basically. But then there was this kind of responsibility for the own family winery. And yeah, after years of traveling, I then decided, okay, do I really want to come back home to join my family, and on which conditions? And the first thing was that I told my father that there's one thing I really one condition, and this is, if you want me to come back home, we're gonna change to organic farming, because this is a need for me. And I thought they're not gonna do this so quickly, and I can squeeze out some more years on traveling. But yeah, so this was for me the basic. Next to working on wineries, I was working on farms. I tried my luck with working with animals. I decided, no, I better stick with wine. I tried to get the idea of permaculture, of agriculture, and then I thought, as a winemaker, you can combine quite a lot of. I mean, the whole concept of terroir. This is something which I think also as an old winemaker you will still be learning. And you can go into plants, you can learn about science, you can experiment, you work with nature. But the coolest thing is that you work with something which is just tasting beautiful. And so this was sort of my first step to join my parents in 2007. And I took it easy, and I told them, yeah, I'm going to spend the first 2 years out in the vineyards to get to know soil, climate, exposition, all those parcels. And I'm still learning, yeah.
So in which countries did you work, or did the internships?
The first was in New Zealand, because this was the place the furthest away of Australia. I had no idea about how this is going to be like. I was very young, and I didn't even know that you might need a working permit. So I started as a illegal, how do you say,
Immigrant.
An illegal worker.
Yeah.
And I was starting in the vineyards as a bucket boy. I worked my way up until I was allowed to clean the presses and the cellar. But the cool thing was that there were so many young people around me from all around the world, and everybody was talking about where they just came from and what their next trip gonna be. And I like this feeling, this lifestyle of being free and traveling around the world, doing different vintages. And I mean, there is one rule, and I think wherever there is wine grown around the world, you always find nice people, good food, and normally also a beautiful countryside. And so, yes, I started, and I jumped to Australia. I fall in love with Australia 2 times. Once when I was young, and I was just liked this wildness. But then years later, I came back when also all of this natural wine movement started in Australia, and I helped some friends playing around or getting the first time in touch with PetNet. And for me, this is it's such a big wine world. And as a young winemaker right now, you have the chance to be just connected. So you know what's happening around the world, which does not mean that you take things and copy paste something. But all this traveling, I learned to get more and more the feeling of what can my hometown, my home vineyard, my Heiligenstein do best to be as unique as possible. And I think it's about not the things what you could do, but it's more that we learned what can I get rid of and make with these little pieces I have in my hands the best wine out of a parcel. And then I was working in the agriculture on some biodynamic farms, also in Australia. I planted trees in Ecuador, and I tried to be a farmer in the Austrian Alps. I think this was the hardest I did in my life.
Austrian Alps?
Where?
The Hochiven at the Bregenzerwald on about 2,000 meters. And this was hard. No, this was really, there is no weekend. If you work with animals, there is always some shit to do. It's get out in the morning. It can even snow. I think it snowed end of July up there. And so no excuse. And that's why we have now I'm a big fan of cooperations. I don't have my own cattle or cows.
Yeah.
But we get our organic cow manure from some local farmers.
And you're very thankful to them.
I'm really thankful that there are still guys existing, because where do you get organic cow shit to make the best compost? It's quite hard to get, actually. And and then I came back to the old world, actually, and my father forced me, actually, because after traveling, he told me, okay, son, now the fun is over. Either you come back home to work on the winery, or you study something real, which was winemaking in his eyes. And so I took the chance to go to Germany to study and check out all the German wine regions. And the young winemaker colleagues, they got me into minerality and come on, this is the difference between the blue, the gray, and the red slate. And this was some beautiful 3 years in the Rheingau. But then it's quite close to France. And so we always jumped over to make some harvests in France. And this is a completely different concept, which I like very much. When you come from the German school now then to over the border to a more laissez-faire, or to a different style of getting in touch with your wine, with your soil, with your history. And I always had in the very far back in my mind my Kamptal, but when I tried to work and travel, I always tried to be completely in the moment where I am. But I think it was the best thing that we're living in a world where we are free to travel and where we can experiment different things. And this is, I think, the best thing what any young winemaker can do. And because when you talk about terroir, this is nothing which is written in books. You can't learn this out of books, a bit of it, but terroir it's changing. It's very personal. And I think every young winemaker needs to reinterpret his own terroir on his own, because it's changing. The climate completely changed since when my grandfather was making wine from the same parcels I do now. They had a completely different climate, and it was a completely different wine world. As soon as you change to organics in your vineyards, the soil will change. And when you believe in terroir, all of those changes going to change at the end the bottle or the wine in the barrel. And so it's.
So where do you see this change after? Probably takes a couple of years until changes really fall into effect.
Yeah.
After your first year of converting, where do you see the impact already? Where do you see the change starting?
So when you take let's say I could buy a pretty old completely conventional chemical vineyard a couple of
Yep.
years ago. Beautiful old wines, and I had the chance to buy it. And what we do is we put the vineyard on cold turkey, basically. So the vineyard needs to sweat out all this shit which it collected over the years. The first thing what we do is it gets a dose of compost. But when a vineyard is used to chemical fertilizer, to systemical spraying stuff, um, as soon as you change to put away all of this stuff, we treated the vineyard like we do all of our organic vineyards. But in the first couple of years, the grapes were just rotten away. So could not, I could not handle, I could not protect those grapes from rotting by using very soft organic methods. So this takes a couple of years, and I believe that often it even takes longer than the 3 years of conversion to organics.
Mhm. No, but where do you see it start shifting?
The
When you
first
just to
time
say
shifting,
exact, it makes
it depends. When I took over my family vineyards, my parents
Mhm.
never used for the last generation any herbicide. They never used any chemical fertilizer. So, and everything starts in the soil. And if you could take over kind of a healthy soil and you start to adapting with a new kind of clovers, with a more diverse green cover, then the impact is not so hard. Then you don't see these big changes. But
Mhm.
like the example of a really hardcore conventional vineyard. So first you have to let it grow, and after 2-3 years the vigor will go down, and then you can talk about starting to going into organic quality. Actually, we try to reduce the vigor so to keep the plants more in balance, to have more self-resistance, and this is something which you can see very quickly actually, but it takes some time till all this stuff goes out of the vineyard. And you definitely feel it in, so I have the feeling, I feel it in the change of the taste. When we talk in the Campbell or with friends converting to organics, all of them realize that the point at the vintage when we taste the grapes and when we say, wow, it's tasty, this is quite a bit earlier than before. So this is one thing which I like very much, because this is maybe one big impact what we did in terms of changing our harvest times. They shifted way earlier to the front. We have the feeling that the grape is just tasting right on an earlier stage. And the good thing is, on an earlier stage, I still have more acidity, which helps us quite a lot in times of climate change. And I still believe that Campbell, it's a really cool climate hidden spot here. We are also affected by climate change. But there are many things where we as a farmer, we are doing culture. Also, when we talk about natural wine, it's cultural wine. We have so many things we can tune to kind of balance out these weather extremes. And it's going to be the biggest challenge for any farmer or wine grower in the future.
So you brought already one topic up, and I wanted to pitch this on you: climate change. How do you see this as a farmer?
Um,
Because often, this is for non-wine people or for non-farming people, climate change, they perceive this term very, very differently than you as a farmer.
mhm.
How do you see this from a farming perspective throughout the year?
Okay, it's first of all, climate change. It's a fact, and also we as a wine growers, when you just note down every year the time of bud break, of flowering, of veraison. This is like how do you say?
It's like coming up.
It's how do you say, like
You can say it in German.
du siehst einfach diese Tendenz.
You see the tendency going, becoming earlier and earlier.
It's becoming earlier and earlier.
Okay.
And like this year, we had quite a normal traditional vintage. It was, we had enough rain. The day extremes, the temperatures were quite normal. Climate change doesn't mean that every year it's getting more and more. We had years like 2010 where we had the completely opposite. This was one of the coolest years, but this was this big, I believe this was this outbreak of this volcano in Iceland, which
Mhm.
just covered Europe and where we just had less sun radiation. And 2014 was an extreme in the other side. But all of the other years, starting from the 2000, it's going warmer, it's going more extremes. Every year we read about, we had the hottest August, we had the driest July, we had the hottest day in March since recording. So those are facts where I believe in, and we see it's happening. But it's not like, oh, we can't do nothing against it. I mean, sure, we all can do something against it, but as a farmer, you can make your mind up how does too little rain effect, especially Heiligenstein in the back. This is one of the hottest and driest places. And even there, we have some parcels where we have dry grown wines. And I think the magic thing it's humus,
Yeah.
which is just completely balancing out extremes. On the one side, it's working organic using green cover, which is covering the soil, lowering the temperature of the soil, lowering evaporation. You can also do it in the other side. If it's too much raining, this plants will suck away the water, or the water can go easier down in deeper layers, or the water can get conserved for a dry period coming up. So I think the future is organic thinking and organic methods. But I also think that both worlds, conventional and organics, will grow closer together because each world is learning from each other. And I think as a farmer, you have to be open-minded. And for me, it's very important to be free and not dependent on big industries and big companies. But I think as when you work close with nature, you see the impact immediately. So you feel it when you are too late with pruning and it's getting really warm in March, or when we started harvest in 2018 on the 16th of August. This never happened. I was working 15 years before in the Roussillon, which was known for hot and dry region. And we started there also in August. And they told us, this is crazy. We had to start middle of August. And 15 years later, here in the cool hidden climate Kamptal, we are starting in August. So this is something my parents would never have believed that this is going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's happening. I mean, it was sparkling wine and not our Erste Lagen wines, but still, it was August. This is holiday. This is not work and not harvest season.
So you made a kind of what does humus change your vineyard, or why do you use more humus?
We love to, so it's not use humus, it's build up humus.
Yeah.
It's a long-term project. I mean, where shall I start? I can start with the earthworm, the only animal in the world which can produce tone humus complex. This is the magic thing. This is the best what you can have. This is why we're using the vermicompost, it's called, I think. We make our own tea out of it. We activate the soil. We bring back life. This is what we do, for example. That's the first work in springtime. As soon as we work the soil, we make our vermicompost preparation. And this is just information of life. So all the organism, I mean, we don't see them, but if you take a handful of earth from a vineyard or from a forest, this is full of life. And coming to humus or to compost, when you dig in the forest, in the soil, and you smell it, I mean, I hope everybody knows how this is smelling. This is like this beautiful, this is humus, because a forest is producing its own humus over the years. And I would love to have the same smell in my vineyards when I dig into it. And the smell, what you smell, this is microorganism. It's like fungi stuff. And the more the soil is smelling like this, so you can judge the quality by smelling the soil already. But you can bring in humus from extern when you make your own compost. This is what we make out of organic cow manure, of grass, of everything what we took away from the vineyard, like all the stalks and skins, what we don't use. Everything goes back to compost. The compost does fermentation, and then we bring it a year later again in the vineyard. Because you cannot only take away something every year from your vineyard. If you harvest, you take the grapes away, and you need to bring something back. This is a kind of this circle of life. And so this is where you need to bring something back. And you can also produce humus by working with green covers and kind of harvesting your green cover. So this organic material is dying, and it gets processed to humus again. It's
So
like
does he humus, which sits on top probably of the soil?
it
Does
is
it hold off the heat a little bit towards the soil, and does it protect it more? This humus might be drier, and the floor just underneath is wet, not wet, but is cooler and has more water in it.
if you take it, I mean, it's a very slow process of building up humus. It's not like you can bring it on top when you bring in compost.
No, but it's if you have a healthy vineyard, and if let's say we would go to your vineyard in August,
or if
of 2020, if you would if you just take the humus layer off, how would the soil feel underneath?
I just was digging holes in the vineyards the other week. Now it's the best time to see how much earthworm activities right now.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So now it's the period where the green cover is in the winter dying and the earthworm is super active. And when you dig in about a spoon or 30 centimeters, this is the darkest layer. And this is the most humus. And for sure, this is kind of a protection. But the most important thing is that it's on the one side, it's a protection. On the other side, it's loose. A very important effect of humus is that as soon as rain is coming, we need to have the ability to bring the water quickly down into deeper layers. Otherwise, erosion would come and the humus would be washed away. And if you have just a hard, compressed soil on top, when rain is coming, there is no chance that the water goes deep to the roots. And so this is something, I mean, it's easier to talk about humus than actually to make it and to keep it, because you make one mistake and the work of 2-3 years is gone. So, and this is the optimum I'm talking, but as a farmer, you always have to be diplomatic. You have to do certain decisions in the right moment, because at the end, you want to make a great wine. When I was young and I was trying to get the experience I learned on agriculture, I wanted to have the most flowerful, the most colorful vineyards, and I was planting all kind of different leguminosis and clovers. At the end, I had a beautiful, full of animals and bees green cover, but the competition was too strong to my wines that at the end I couldn't even see my shoots, because the wines had such a hard time to compete with the green cover that the quality actually was not becoming better. I had the most beautiful vineyard for pictures and for animals. If I would be a honey maker, it would be the best honey, but you have to make this balance of, okay, you're not going to reach 100% there, but it's always to work it diplomatic with nature and to it's a thing trying to avoid as many mistakes as possible. You cannot reach 100% with nature.
Mhm.
Nature is always the strongest force, and we are always so smart at the end of the year, and then we know what we should have done a couple of months before. But this is the life of a winemaker, of every farmer. It's always the goal of how close can I reach it.
You obviously, because speaking of which, and I sit right next to the bottle, this probably explains why you have so many birds and flowers on top with your last statement, right? This is the Belle Naturelle. Does this have anything to do with your just story you just said?
Yes, this has to do with yeah, our last 10, 15 years in the wine world, about our um, relationship to terroir and tradition, but also to that we take tradition not as a factum but a choice you can use, and you can use many things out of tradition. It always gives you a strong base and security, but on the other side we are always exploring. And Belle Naturelle was born, I mean, um, I'm always trying not to divide things. On the one side, we are trying to make a new interpretation of the classics. On the other side, I really fall in love with this philosophy of less is more, and reduce to the max of what can you get rid of and still make a great wine. It's for me always a challenge to show that all the stuff we learned on university, it's not necessary to make great wine. There are other ways also. But there is one rule, depending on either in natural or traditional wine world, it's always about quality of the grapes. And this is the most, or this is the challenge. Then you are free to choose which direction you want to go. But for us, when we started to do Grüner Veltliner on the skins, this was more than 10 years ago, we were just following our nose and taste and see how far can we go. And it's working on Pinot Noir, that you do a skin fermentation over weeks, and still it's beautiful velvet to drink, and there is not this bad tannins. And The other idea was, when we were young and taking over the winery, we still believed more in the later the harvest, the better philosophy, which we changed a couple of years later, because we did quite a late harvest, and I was always missing the acidity level of a traditional Grüner Veltliner in times of climate changes. And we thought then that maybe the tannins, it's also a kind of acidity. This is kind of, it could balance out the missing acidity in the wine. And so we started with skin fermenting Grüner. But we found out that we fall in love with this change of aromas, that it's just incredible what a crazy big diversity on aromas is in the grape, in the berry, in the same grape, depending on which method you're using, which style you want to do. And I mean, often people think that natural wine, it's like making wine like 100 years ago. But here in the Kamtal, if my grandfather would have done Grüner Veltliner on the skins, he would have kicked out of the Kamtal, because this is not allowed. This is not tradition.
I was just about to corner you with this because I know you make both.
Yeah,
You make the Grüne Veltliner Terrasse and you make Belle Naturelle.
yeah,
And as far as I listen to you, you're very traditional, trying to keep keep in Austria is a very traditional country.
it is. Yeah, but I had so, but
Almost a little too much sometimes, especially from someone living in New York.
no, but I think tradition can only be kept alive when you rethink tradition. And on the one side, we also changed the traditional style of wine. So about which tradition are we talking about? The last 20, 30 years, about the last 50, 60 years? And also in the classic wines, when we talk about Erste Lagen, we changed our tradition back to the times of my grandfather. Going back to big old Austrian oak barrels, we kicked out most of the new French oak. We stopped fermenting, or we stopped making Grüner flavored by any barrique. We want to make wines without any kind of aromatization, and this starts by using zero botrytis. We want to harvest ripe, but not overripe. Otherwise, you're losing that diversity, the voice of the soil of the place. We even stopped batonnage. We don't want to boost up or make any wine more creamy. I don't want to polish away any edges or spikes of character of minerality. And so also with the traditional wines, we changed, but quite dramatically actually. But it's more obvious when you bottle a wine unfiltered. So everybody asks you, oh, is your filter broken or are you on the natural wine trip now? And so this was something where we didn't take this as a, yeah, it was a decision with Stephanie and I, we were tasting and we were just trying, okay, how far can we go? And in the beginning, we went too far, but it's often 2 steps ahead, 1 step back. And we stopped all these projects on orange wines, on super oxidative or super tannic style grüners, because we are also in the natural wine, we think of tradition, not about tradition of the past, but how can a natural wine style can become tradition in the Kamptal in 10, 20 years. I think this is not a trend or something. This is something where it's a thing you believe in. It's a thing. This has, I think, a big future, and I think we're becoming better and better the more people try. And it's basically everybody doing natural wine in our region. It's kind of the first generation because nobody 20, 30 years ago was doing it. And so when we go to Bel Naturel or to Grüne Veltliner, we also want a natural wines telling a story about origin, about vintage, about variety, and not just make a interesting wine which is different. This is not enough. This is or not enough for us. We want to get also this elegancy and purity into natural wines by just getting rid of filtration, getting rid of any finings. In some years, Bel Naturel has 0 sulfur. This is also no dogma. We try, we decide. But I think Kamptal, it's kind of a cool place with, and also Grüne Veltliner, it's a nice variety to work on skin ferments. But it's always the question on the dose. If you do too much, okay, then it's over. And I don't want to make styles where it goes in a direction what friends in Sicily are doing or in the south of France or somewhere. But also when it comes to natural, I believe that terroir, it's the most important power and force you'll smell and taste in those wines.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, since you bring this topic up, natural wine can be a very divisive topic and has almost a tribal-like situation. Me personally, of course, I was long on the conventional side, but the more I started reading and the more I started really tasting also, and then when I wrote the book, I looked deeper into it and interviewed a lot of people for that. And I learned something interesting. Also, non-wine people, I learned from them actually the very most. Mm-hmm. Young people, I went out with them actually once, and they said to me, one brought a natural wine, and I completely crushed the wine. And then I realized an interesting impact because all of a sudden they were just, you know, they were between 25 to 30 years young women. They were really into food. They were very interested in wine, but didn't know a whole lot. But they were very interested. And again, this is ultimately a very, very important client base of mine, which I cannot dismiss, no matter where the educational level is. So I crushed the wine and then noticed one thing. All of a sudden, I was on the sidetrack. They didn't listen anymore, right? Because they didn't felt heard. Okay. Because they liked that wine. They thought, you know, and I have to admit, this was a very volatile wine.
Okay.
So no, but it's interesting. It's a trend, which of course it's a trend, but I think it's a little more than that already. And young people take really interest in connecting to the land, connecting to craftsmanship and artisanal production, rather than going on to the industrialization almost, which is the complete counter extreme. And it made me think quite a bit. And I spent this year quite some time um, to explore that. Now, look, is every natural wine good? No. Is every conventional wine good? No. So, I mean, this is on both sides. But I did really research into it, and I spent because I list the reason why I asked you about humus so much was I spent quite a amount of time with Christian Cheetah, and he showed a couple of things which were really, I mean, fascinating to say the least. What impact it does, and we were in the super hot uh, in August. It was super hot in the Burgenland, and it's groundbreaking. But how do you see this kind of tribal, almost component like?
Um, I'm not a preacher. I'm not a religious hardcore hardliner in any directions. I think the highest goal of every ecological system is diversity, and so I think there will be a coexistence. But we learned so much from both sides. On the one side, it can be really practical to have a good theory, what you learn in school. You should not, or I always tried not to do any mistake on myself to learn. And when it comes to VA, to Mousy, to all of these mistakes, you need to know how far can you go, where it comes from. On the other side, um, you really need to learn it by doing. Otherwise, you have to start. You only can believe in it when you really see, wow, this is working. I mean, um, I don't know how many years back, even we had to argue about spontaneous fermentation. There were still people saying this is not working. This how? You need to put something in. And when I talked to my father about the things I want to change on the winery, he asked me, so what the hell? I sent you to university to learn how to make wine, and you come back with these stupid ideas from France or from somewhere. And but then I asked him, come on, how did his father, my grandfather, did his wines? In the till 1960, there was no stainless steel in our region. There was no temperature control. We had no inoculate, no yeast or something we could put in. This was really pretty much by nature. Yes, they had sulfur, and I think they used 10 times more sulfur than we did nowadays. But all, and they had time. So the wines stayed in the wood barrels till next year. So
That's a critical factor.
yeah, so 11 months, 12 months.
Uh-huh.
And we learned that time is such a cool thing when you have it, when you can use it. Or to make stabilization. Everybody is scared of malolactic fermentation, especially white wines or in Austria, Germany. So you have to use sulfur to avoid this, to avoid that. But if you have healthy grapes and if you know how to handle the malolactic fermentation, you even gain more stability, more long livingness in the wines. And so I think that when we started working on natural wine, we learned so much and also used so many aspects into the classic wines. Um, and so for me, I mean, I think they are coming closer and closer together. And in the future, I don't want, the big difference will be, is this a skin fermented wine or is this a natural wine without skin fermentation, like a classic Heiligenstein, no skin fermentation. But you can also go with the classic wines super far into, with the classic wines, you can work like on natural ideas. And for me, some of the greatest wines, or in the natural wine world, if you go to the Loire or to the Jura, those are natural wines tasting like the super classy wines. And those people are doing this since ages. And I think they would not even talk about natural wines unless some sommeliers came there and told them, hey, you do natural wine since years. And this is something where, for me, it should be a silent revolution. And I think many of those faulty wines will disappear. I think it will not be cool to have a VA that is just too obvious. I mean, I'm really tolerant to VA, but there are mistakes which are not cool, and I hate this mousy stuff. I'm allergic to that, and this is something which is not cool in my eyes. It can be so natural, but it's a certain dose. When it's too much, it's too much.
Can you explain us, because you have the Grüne Veltliner Terrassen and the Belle Naturelle, are they coming from the same vineyards?
No, we have the Grüne Veltliner Stein and the Belle Naturelle. This is the same, not the same vineyards, but it's not a single vineyard, but it's the same grapes of the same altitude. So it's basically the neighbor parcels. And this is also when we started. On the one side, we did it very classy, hand picking into the press, going to stainless steel. On the other side, we just fermented the grapes whole bunch or partly distemmed. And this is a cool tasting, actually, if you see those two wines next to each other. Sure, I mean, if you drink first time in your life a natural wine, it's maybe like your first cigarette or your first beer. I don't know how your first beer was when you tasted it.
Terrible.
But I mean, I love beer, and I
do that too.
and it's the same with natural beer, natural wine. And I know which kind of natural wines I like and which one not so much. But this is like, I mean, you have the same grapes, and this is when you harvest the same grapes, and you see what is turning out at the end. It's incredible what kind of information, of taste, of flavors are in the same grapes. And it's just how to release it or give it a possibility to show a different angle, a different face of the same vineyard, of the same variety. And
so when you harvest, do you sulfur a little bit or not at all?
No, during harvest, I mean, now we come to a topic about lees, actually. We want to have perfect lees, which are healthy, and lees don't like sulfur that much. So we don't use any sulfur on the grapes, in the mash, or in the juice. So, and this is also when we want to have the full diversity on different yeasts coming from the vineyard, mixing up with the yeasty stuff in the cellar. And I mean, the rule is the grapes need to be healthy. And when it comes to natural fermentation or to the natural yeast, we started to make, or we still do in some years, that we make yeast starters in the vineyard. So we go into the vineyard, into the parcels, we pick 30-40 kilos, we mash them, and we let the fermentation start in the vineyard. So there is no other yeast from the cellar. And it's not like when you work in an old historical wine cellar, this is full of yeasts from different vintages. From maybe there are yeasts living which my grandfather brought into the cellar from. I mean, it's like making cheese, actually. You have a certain culture there. And it will always be a competition between the yeasts from the vineyard, the yeasts from the cellar. But I still believe that the yeast from a certain year, from a certain vegetation period, definitely has an impact of the style of the vintage wine. But the question was sulfur. We want to stay.
You lost him?
Looks like it.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't drink enough.
No. I'm staying with water.
I'm staying. It's very interesting, huh?
Oh, fascinating, huh?
I'm sure it does in. So, because I have a little more questions on the technical part. I'm sure he's going to dial in. Can you text him?
Wait.
Hold on. Yeah, it looks like we've lost him. And we just wait for a moment. because we poured this wine a little bit at Le Bernardin, as you know, and it was quite a shocker and quite experience at first for the clients, no? But then everybody loved it.
Oh, big time. But in the beginning, yeah, people were like, "Oof, what is this?" Yeah, but very successful. I love the wine, so let me send him an email.
No, but then we got quite a good response to it.
Oh,
Okay, sorry.
We were worried that
Okay.
you didn't have enough wine, and hence that's why we fell off.
You left us.
I don't know till when did you hear me?
No, we probably have
Yeah.
5-10 more minutes, and that's it. Just in a quickly, couple technical factors. So no sulfuring. And then how long skin fermentation do you do? How long, not skin, how long do you leave it on the skins?
On the like when you do the Belle Naturelle, like the 19, this was destemmed. We fill up a old red wine fermenter where my parents did Zweigel and stuff inside. Fermentation starts within 2-3 days. This goes really quickly. As much the more.
What's the fermenter like? What product is it from?
I can. It's a oak.
It's oak. Okay.
I maybe sent you a picture. I sent you one picture. At the back, you see the fermenters. It's like a open top fermenter. I can.
Is it this way? You have this wonderful beard.
This wonderful.
You have a beard.
One of those. This is a small one. This is the Belle Naturelle Rosé actually inside. And there is
really?
Right. There are some bigger ones. But this is the art. It's a classic red wine fermenter. Yeah. Because first we thought we need to punch down, which we don't do anymore. We just tried with our hands. When the cake comes up and becoming dry, we put it down. But fermentation goes quite high in temperature. That means fermentation is quite quick. Normally, when it's warm, also during fermentation, the malo.
This one.
No, down.
Here, this one, no?
Yes, this is standing on top. This is the view from the top. And you see, this is maybe after, I don't know, this is at the end of the fermentation. And they are on the top, the layer is becoming brownish a bit.
Yeah.
And as soon as you go down with your hand, and after a couple of centimeters, the grapes are completely green. So this is also
like here in the middle where you see the foam still a little bit, right? Do you see this?
Yeah, was maybe I was just there with my hands or something. And this is also a kind of a layer on top, which is also protecting the wine of oxidation. Sure. You can do this. I can send you a picture of an amphora, which we did 6 months, and then we opened it. And the first time we opened, we thought, oh shit, this doesn't look so good. It's all brownish. But then we just digged away the first 10 centimeters on layer, and everything was super bright and greenish, like it was keeping in reduction. And as long as the yeast is alive, it's a super strong power, a reductive power, and this keeps the wine in protected of oxidation.
Yeah, excellent.
So this is why we are sulfuring, and this is something what we also took over to our classic traditional wines. So like the Erste Lagen of Heiligenstein, Leuserberg, in some years they get last year it was a bit earlier, but in some years it's Easter when they get the first time a small dose of sulfur. It's always this balance of oxidation reduction. You have to taste carefully and make the right decision.
I have another one. That's probably what I show on.
This is right. And this is how it really it's. When you take one of those grapes and you bite in, it's like like a cereal, like a rice cracker. There is the the Weinstein, partly dropped out in the grape. And this is the part which is then quite high in tannins. If you take this and if you press it, or when we press it, this is the really orange part of juice what you get. And this is high and rich on tannins. What I well, forgot to tell you before about Belle Naturelle. After 2 weeks of fermentation, the cake goes down. We rack away the free run, the free juice or wine into barrels. And then we shuffle out the grapes. And then we press very carefully. And as soon
What do
as
you mean? This head falls down?
yeah,
And you basically take the top off?
no, when you rack the juice away from the fermenter,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
the grapes are remaining, and
Yeah.
they you have to shovel
Yeah.
out,
Of
like
course.
when you do the red wine pressing. It's like the same when you do Pinot. So then you make the fraction of the pressing, and we're only taking the juice which is still bright. And as soon as it's changing orange or to tannic, we stop. We don't use this for Belle Naturelle, because then it's not going to be a grüne Veltliner anymore. It's going to become an orange Veltliner. And this is a very careful moment of decision, where it's also a decision of taste, when we have to decide, okay, stop it. Otherwise, we're going to lose the character of variety, maybe, or it will be too tannic that it's hard to tell. This comes from a cool climate area where Camtel stands for elegancy. And this is what, in terms of terroir, the human being is taking response of, in which style we shape it.
Yeah. Cool. Sorry, I'm going back and forth. If someone tastes Grüne Veltliner Belle Naturelle, who never tasted kind of these naturally inspired wines, what should they experience, in your opinion? What should they look for also?
There is one thing what Grüne Veltliner is standing for, and people say this is this herbal character. And I would say this is, in Belle Naturelle, you find diversity on spices combined with a berry. For me, this is quite close to a grape. When you smell in, you have some yellowish ripe aromas. I often like to talk in colors. When we taste in our cellar, we talk, oh, this is more like yellow, more green yellow, more bluish. And this is for us like a multi-layer wine. When you open the bottle, for example, if you should kind of slowly shake it a bit, so everything is in the mix.
Do you want even the cloudy part?
The cloudiness, yeah.
So hence that's why it's in your descriptor also. When I've noticed, when you pick the wine, turn it a little bit, right?
Yes, but don't turn it like this. Turn it like this.
Okay, good.
And so you have this. I don't know. Even my kids can tell a difference between apple juice that is filtered or that is cloudy, and it's the same with the natural wine. And this is something where it's often hard for me to filter my wines, because you definitely filter a dimension or a diversity out of the wine, which I like very much. And so this is why in a classic Grüner, on a traditional style, you have maybe more the focus, the precision, the perfection. In here, in Belle Naturelle, it goes more to diversity, and it's often I like this balance of opposites. Oh, it's herbal, but there is also this berryness. It's soft, but there is also some tension of the tannins. And this is something which is, for a wine drinker, or when I taste wines, I'm always looking for something that surprises me in a positive way, hopefully. Mm-hmm. And so I think don't be afraid of natural Grüner. It can be really lovely, and it's the other right of Grüner, basically. Yeah. It's this many-faced God where you don't know in which face you're looking right now. But it's definitely a wine which is telling about beauty, about purity. And that's why we were calling it Belle Naturelle, like natural beauty. Or
so, what do you eat with it? Because we are two sommeliers. That's for us the immediate question.
normally I always let this decision to the sommeliers.
I know, but that's why I always ask winemakers, because I want to see the other side and I hear the other side.
Um, um, for me, I always first choose the wine before I get the menu. Actually, this is wherever I go.
Yeah.
Which wine is really I want to have, but it's now something I would not take it as a starter. Actually, I would do it. Not in the classical way. I would not. I mean, I like to drink red wine also with fish, and this wine I would drink with some food with more texture, like legume, uh,
Vegetable.
vegetables on the grill or something. Something where you have a secondary aroma, not something like boiled or stuff, but where you have like, yeah, like take your zucchini and do it like a barbecue, like a steak or something.
Mm.
Um, you can use this for any kind of meat, or maybe more the really I drink this with a steak if I want to. I drink this in between to refresh of two courses. You can have this with a traditional Austrian Frittatensuppe at the beginning. Um, but this is always where it's so, in which moment are you? Where are you? It's, I know this is your most important question. And
No, no, no. I always
Mm-mm.
look. We can only learn so. We can only learn so much, and this is always, I've experienced this when I ask winemaker about the food,
yeah,
and I know you guys go out quite a bit.
yeah.
It's not that you sit at home and stand in this beautiful vineyard in the back. You go out. So what do you eat with the wine? And it's always funny. This is where you make winemakers always very restrained.
Yeah, because it's I never order my wine when I go out somewhere. This
Yeah,
is
but this is typically, I always say, listen, we are not normal in that sense because we're so targeted onto wine, but wine goes with food.
but we are really it's true that we are always thinking also in food. I
Yeah.
mean, there were moments um, that changed my view on wines. This was when I was eating. We were sitting in Osaka at the sashimi guy, and we were some winemakers, and his signature dish was just a pure meat of any kind of sashimi, quite rare and really fucking expensive. And all of us wanted to show our biggest, best wine. And all of those wines just fucked the fish. The fish had no chance. The fish itself, without any soya sauce or stuff, it was so raw, so beautiful, so minimalistic. And this was when I thought, okay, we really need to think of those guys. What's our goal? And when in our times where I have the feeling that everything is becoming bigger, louder, faster, often those silent voices are not heard anymore. And this is where, especially with all of our wines on our winery, we reset, we re-ask tradition. We are not in the run of becoming the first in terms of the biggest. And I would love to have my wines like a perfect background music for a beautiful long night long dinner, which is just kind of activating. It's like a LP of Kruder and Dorfmeister, which is not noisy, which is just in the background, and which is just giving you a good emotions, and which is just keeping you fit, and yeah, keep on eating, keep on drinking. And I think this is also a thing which hopefully will be more respected in the future, that go deeper into it, give terroir a chance to smell, to talk to you. Any aromatized yeast is stronger and louder. We can't compete with that, but we want to work on our scale, on the as how real, how true to our farms, vineyard, cellar can we do our wines.
Mhm.
And this is so important that, yeah, I'm so happy that this is just coming now, that people are more understanding of what's actually happening. And for us, the food, I want my wines to not to be so special that you can only eat this or that with this wine. So the general background of our wines is that it's food is our friend, and we don't want to battle with the food. We don't want to blow the fish away from the plate. We want to be with you. And I think this is together you can just get a much more for your guests on the table. I think this can be a really, really cool experience of taste and smell. And I mean, Bel Naturel, give this wine 5 minutes in the glass. Put the same wine in a bigger glass, you're gonna have a different wine.
Totally. I've tried this the other day, and I tried to have it open. It was day and night.
Mhm.
It becomes, the longer it's open, it becomes more textural.
No, and this is is tried out. And this is for me, those are lively wines or energetic wines.
Energetic wines. Yeah.
So I have one more question to you. How does someone feel growing up in a region and work? This is your regular office, right?
Not really. This is I have to jump in my drone to make a picture like this. No, but this is one of our really, really cool places. It's the Loiserberg, and on the right side of the streets, it's the southeastern part. This is where the Grüner Veltliner is growing. On the left side, where these red bushes are, and going a bit further to the left,
and here
becomes really steep. This is the southwestern part, where it's pure glimmer microschist soil. This is where Riesling comes from. And even the street is continuing a bit higher up, actually. And this is where we are having our Grüner for our sparkling wines. This is then really high up and really a nice, cool, chilled climate. And yeah, but this is also the beauty of the Kamptal. You jump from one hill to the other and you find yourself in a completely different exposure, climate. This is maybe the most western and highest tops. And when you go more to the east, it will become a bit more warm, the climate. And this is the nice thing that I always tried to get out of Kamptal because it was too small for me. But now I really love this small structuredness of the region and just jumping around from one parcel to the other. It's quite a job during harvest to decide when to pick which vineyard. So we eat shitloads of grapes every harvest to get this feeling and to get the feeling of the vintage, actually, and to make the right decisions.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I stopped the recording now. We can finish in German then quickly.
Okay, cool.
Super.
Ja, cool. Na, vielen, vielen Dank. Oh.
Das war
Super,
super.
vielen Dank.